After selling my business for $23 million, I hosted a retirement party. But just before the toast, I saw my daughter-in-law drop something into my champagne. So when no one was watching, I secretly swapped glasses with her mother. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The champagne flute left my daughter-in-law's hand at the same instant her mother hit my marble floor. Marjorie's body jerked like a marionette with the strings yanked too hard, foam purling at the corners of her mouth. The glossy party chatter strangled into silence. Someone screamed. Someone else fumbled with a phone and yelled for 911. I didn't move. I watched Brittany, because I had watched her 10 minutes earlier slip a tiny vial from her purse and doctor one particular glass. The chipped one I always used, so I wouldn't hand it to a guest by mistake. I hadn't survived 70 years, or sold a consulting firm for $23 million, by being easy to kill. So as the neighbor admired Brittany's new tennis bracelet, as she basked under the hall light like a trophy on a velvet stand, I traded the poisoned flute for the one sitting by Marjorie's handbag and walked away with my own pulse steady and my expression bright. Now Marjorie gasped wetly at my feet. The bartender's playlist had cut to static. Voices overlapped. "Is she breathing? Get towels! Move back!" And then the paramedics shouldered in, calm as winter. I knelt because that's what a gracious hostess does when a guest collapses. Brittany knelt too, hands trembling so prettily I almost applauded. Daniel, my son, pushed through the crowd with a face I'd once trusted completely. The look he gave Brittany lasted half a heartbeat longer than shock needed. It told me he knew something, even if he didn't want to. "Which hospital?" I asked the lead paramedic when they lifted Marjorie to the gurney, my voice level as a jury forewoman delivering a verdict. "Riverside General. I'll follow." "Mom," Daniel said quickly, laying that shepherding hand on my elbow he'd inherited from his father. "We'll handle it. Stay here. We'll update you." How considerate. Keep the target at the scene of the crime while they regrouped. "Nonsense," I said, smiling at a neighbor who was pretending not to eavesdrop. "Marjorie's practically family." I took my keys from the bowl by the door and left the crystal laughter of the party curdled in the air behind me. At Riverside General, the emergency department smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. I kept my eyes open and my mouth mostly shut. "Plant alkaloids," a doctor murmured to a nurse. "Unknown ingestion," another said, writing it on a chart. Brittany paced in staccato clicks across the tile like an expensive metronome. Daniel sat with his shoulders rigid and his phone face down on his knee, as if it might betray him if he looked at it too long. "This is terrible," Brittany said for the 5th time, palms pressed together under her chin as if auditioning for sainthood. "Poor Mom, I can't imagine how this happened." I touched her arm. "These things are mysterious, dear, but she only sipped a little before she fell, thank goodness." Her step faltered. "The champagne?" she asked, a beat too light. "Oh, I'm probably just seeing patterns." I smiled again. It's amazing what a smile can hide. Hours later, a physician told us Marjorie was stable. "She'll stay overnight," he said. "The tests are inconclusive." A polite way of saying poison without saying poison. Brittany squeezed out a tear. Daniel offered to drive me home. I declined. I'm not fond of being chauffeured to my own demise. Back in my kitchen, the bottle she'd opened for the party stood 3/4 full on the counter, innocent as a sleeping snake. I poured myself a glass from an unopened bottle, the real champagne, the good stuff I hadn't planned to share, and took it to my study. Numbers calm me, even ugly ones, so I started a list. Daniel's architectural firm had been limping for 2 years. Brittany's boutique bled cash like a fashionably distressed sweater. Mortgage stacked on mortgage, 2 car payments, the holidays that always somehow required a new phone, a newer tablet, something that needed me to swipe a card I didn't live with. I tallied line after line while the house clicked back into its normal bones around me. The phone buzzed at 7:30 a.m. Brittany, gingerly tender. Elaine, I couldn't sleep. Are you feeling okay? After everything? With the food and the drinks, I worry. How thoughtful, I said, looking at the poison bottle. I feel perfectly fine. How's your mother? Better. She doesn't remember much. The doctor said it could have been something she took earlier, on an empty stomach. Marjorie, who labeled her vitamins by weekday and set a smartphone alarm for each dose. That's a relief, I said. We'd hate to think it was something here. Oh no, too quick. Definitely not. The doctors said it wasn't food-related. She wanted the champagne hypothesis dead and buried. I made a note. At 9, Daniel arrived with pastries from the bakery I preferred, a charming prop I recognized from his teenage let me explain repertoire. He arranged them on a plate like peace medals and watched me pour coffee. When he looked around my kitchen, the room reflected back our history. The nick in the table from his middle school science project, the calendar where I used to write his soccer practices, the patch of tile we'd replaced when he dropped a skillet and swore he could fix it himself. Nostalgia is a poor bodyguard. How are you holding up? He asked, the question a prelude. Oh, you know me. Takes more than a little excitement to rattle these old bones. He smiled without reaching his eyes. That's what I was afraid of. He picked at a Danish. Brittany and we've been talking about your situation. My situation, I repeated, tasting the phrase like a lemon seed. You're 70, Mom, alone in a big house. You've got a lot to manage after the sale. He gestured broadly at my life. There it was, the opening argument. I appreciate your concern. There are communities, he pressed, sliding his phone across the table to show a glossy website dripping with sunshine and silver-haired laughter. Silver Pines Residence. It's not a nursing home, it's like a resort. Spa, classes, medical staff on site, just 20 minutes from us. Convenient, I said, for whom I didn't add. There's an entrance fee, he said carefully. $400,000, but it covers everything, I finished. And the paperwork? They'll need a financial disclosure, and for their records, someone with power of attorney, purely precautionary. He said the words the way salespeople say, no pressure. I studied my son. The little boy who used to bring me dandelions had become a man who could say power of attorney without flinching. I'd have forgiven almost anything if not for the glass he'd watched his wife hand me. I'll think about it, I said, and I meant it. But not in the way he hoped. After he left, I called my attorney. Leonard, I need to come in. His office had a view that turned downtown into a chessboard. We sat across from each other at a table that had heard the worst days of my life and seen me survive them. I told him everything. The vial, the glass, the switch, Marjorie collapsing, Daniel's pitch. Leonard listened like a man counting cards. You're certain, he said finally. I am. Proof will be tricky, he said, voice dry. Even with toxicology, intent is a snake that slips the hand, but we can do a different thing first. Which is? We document that your mind is currently sound. He flipped a folder. Geriatric psychiatrist. Not the kind families shop for to get the result they want. We'll get a baseline on record, then we make your estate unappetizing to steal. He pushed over another stack. Trust restructuring. Medical directives naming who may not make decisions for you. Fraud alarms on your accounts. I breathed for the first time since the party. Agency has a taste. It's like biting into an apple that's been polished for you all afternoon and finally sinking your teeth in. There's your physical safety, Leonard added. Cameras, sensors, a panic pendant connected directly to City PD dispatch. Order all of it. On the way home, every car that lingered in my rearview mirror looked like a shadow. Paranoia keeps old women alive. I called a security company. By 8 the next morning, 3 techs in unmarked vans were threading discreet eyes into my walls, slipping motion detectors under my crown molding, pairing a panic button to a dispatcher who promised me a 3-minute response. I told my neighbors I'd had package theft. That lie was easier to live with than the truth. While they worked, Leonard's courier arrived with a neat stack of documents held together with a brass clip. My updated will, my directives, the recast trusts that would make my money as slippery as mercury to anyone but me. I signed them with a hand that didn't shake. The new will was generous to charities I love and stingy to the people who'd tried to hasten my end. Daniel would be provided for modestly for life. Brittany was a lesson in what happens when greed sharpens itself on family. At 3 p.m, Daniel and Brittany showed up uninvited, the kind of couple who always look like they're on their way to or from good news. They didn't notice the new camera that watched them from the corner. Or maybe they did. Their eyes lingered a fraction too long. "We're worried," Daniel began as they sat. "What happened to Marjorie was horrible," Brittany finished, her voice breaking on cue. "If something we brought—" "I don't think that's it," I said pleasantly. "But thank you for caring." Brittany's eyes glittered. "All the more reason to stay with us for a while, just until you're settled. We can help with everything." "What a lovely script," I said, still smiling. "And convenient." "Convenient?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "For you." I let the words sit. Then I softened, because offense only reveals what the defense has already mapped. "I'll be fine here. Besides, you've convinced me to consider Silver Pines. Let's do a tour next week." A flash of triumph crossed Brittany's face and was gone. "That's wonderful," she said. "I'll call the admissions office. They have an opening, but it'll go quickly." "I'm sure it will." When they left, they sat in the driveway for 10 minutes, faces turned toward each other in a war of whispers. I watched them on my monitor with a glass of good wine and the patience of a woman who has negotiated with men scarier than their debt collectors. Finally, Brittany made an angry call. Daniel tried to take the phone. She turned away from him. "It's funny how much you can learn by letting people think you're not looking." That night, I slept with the panic pendant on the bedside table and a plan under my pillow. You cannot outmuscle a current at my age, but you can learn its shape and slip past where it's weakest. If they wanted me dependent, I would be busy, competent, and recorded as such. If they wanted my money, I would make it useless to steal. If they wanted me frightened, I would be frightening instead. The next morning, after coffee black enough to varnish a boat, I made calls. An old business acquaintance who ran a private investigations firm picked up on the first ring. "Nora," I said, "I need a deep dive on my son's and his wife's finances. Every account, every note, every habit. And tell me if there are any doctors in their orbit who evaluate people like me for competency." "Are you sure you want to know?" she asked gently. "I already do." Before lunch, Daniel texted, "We can stop by with the Silver Pines packet this afternoon." I replied with a thumbs up, because sometimes emojis are a better shield than armor. They arrived with a briefcase and the nervous energy of burglars who haven't checked the alarm panel. Paper spilled across my dining table. Admissions contracts, a financial disclosure form that wanted everything, and, of course, the power of attorney document, dressed up as a standard facility requirement. I read it silently while Brittany filled the air with a steady drizzle of words: immediate authority, broad discretion, access to all accounts. "This seems expansive," I said. "It's just precautionary," Daniel said, "and revocable." "Revocable," Brittany echoed, "though the facility has policies about residents who waffle, medical evaluations, waiting periods." She said waiting periods the way a cat says mouse. I looked at both of them and pictured Marjorie's foam-caked lips. Then I pictured the chipped glass and my hand switching it. I felt simultaneous grief and gratitude. Grief for the son who sat across from me, gratitude for the spine I still possessed. "I'll sleep on it," I said. Big decisions deserve morning light. They didn't like that, but they smile-nodded their way out my door anyway. When it clicked shut, I called Leonard again. "I need one more document," I said. "Something that looks like power of attorney, but only controls $1 and a decoy account." "You're a terrifying client," he said with admiration. "I'll have it delivered within the hour." I walked the quiet house while I waited, touching surfaces I'd bought with my first real contract and my first bonus and the last raise I gave myself. My late husband's photograph looked down at me from the mantel. He'd had a gambler's grin and an accountant's caution. "You'd have loved this part," I told him, "the part where I raise the stakes and hide the chips." Just before sunset, I stood at the kitchen window and watched sprinklers stitch silver threads across the lawn. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. The new cameras blinked their patient little lights. The bottle Brittany had opened still sat on the counter like a reminder of the truth. I am not safe because I am loved. I am safe because I am prepared. The phone rang. The display read, "Private number." I answered anyway. "Mrs. Carter?" The voice was female, professional. "This is Detective Kara Lewis with the City Police Department. We received the toxicology report from the hospital. I'd like to stop by tomorrow to ask a few questions about a party at your home." "Of course," I said, and felt my plan click one notch forward. After I hung up, I wrote a list in a fresh legal pad. I like lists. They are the way I remarry myself to reason. Meet Detective Lewis. Provide only what's necessary. Let her do her job. Sign Leonard's decoy. File the real documents in the safe. Proceed with the Silver Pines charade until I know exactly how far Daniel and Brittany are willing to go. Order new locks. You're not paranoid if they truly are after you. Take the good champagne out of the house. Never let anyone pour me anything again without a seal broken in front of me. By the time I capped my pen, the day's fear had burned down to a clean ember of resolve. The arc from shock to action completed itself in my body. Hands steady, heart slow. Out the window, evening deepened. Somewhere in town, an ambulance keened, and somewhere someone surely asked, as Daniel had asked, "Are you sure you're okay?" I was, because I had already chosen what to be. I carried the poison bottle to the trash, then stopped. Evidence is a funny thing, useless until it suddenly isn't. I sealed it in a zipper bag and slid it into the back of the garage freezer behind leftover marinara. If the police asked, I wanted them to have something real to test. Before bed, I poured a small glass from a new bottle and stepped onto the back deck. The air smelled like cut grass and distant rain. I toasted the darkness. To old women, I said aloud, and to the mistake of underestimating them. I slept like a woman who'd chosen her side. I woke before the sun and brewed coffee strong enough to make my heartbeat feel like a metronome. When the doorbell rang at 8, the front camera pinged my phone and framed Detective Kara Lewis on the stoop. Late 30s, hair gathered at the nape, a neutral blazer the color of courthouse walls. Her knock was light, the kind that announces a guest who knows they might not be welcomed. "Mrs. Carter?" she said when I opened the door. "Elaine," I corrected, and stepped back to let her in. The house smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and last night's rain. She clocked the new corner camera in one glance. "You've been busy." "I like to sleep," I said. "Preparation is the lullaby." She smiled at that briefly. We sat at the kitchen table. She set a notepad square to the edges like a person who trusts lines. "I appreciate you agreeing to meet this morning." "Your call helped me feel less crazy," I said. "That's a service in itself." "Let's start with the basics," pen poised. "At your party, your guest, Marjorie Hale, collapsed after drinking champagne. Toxicology shows a cardiotoxic plant alkaloid in her system. It's consistent with aconitine. That's monkshood. It's not common." She watched my face. "Do you know any reason why monkshood would be present at your home?" "Only if someone brought it," I said. "I didn't serve it with the hors d'oeuvres." Kara's mouth ticked. "Walk me through what you observed." I told her the truth, edited for spine and strategy. I had watched my daughter-in-law handle one specific flute, the chipped one I use so I won't hand it to guests, and pour. I had swapped flutes while she admired her own wrist. Then Marjorie had sipped and fallen, and the party had turned into a tableau of noise and fear. I did not narrate my history with my son's debts, or Brittany's boutique, or the long psychology of being someone people misjudge because they mistake white hair for soft thinking. I kept those details like money in a pocket no one knows exists. "Do you still have the bottle that was poured from?" Kara asked. "In the freezer." I stood and she followed me through the mudroom into the garage. I slid open the freezer drawer and reached behind the marinara. The zipper bag crinkled in my hand. I thought, evidence is a funny thing. "It is," she agreed, accepting the bag without touching the bottle itself. She tamped the zipper down, then slid the whole package into another evidence bag. "We'll test it. It may be hard to establish chain of custody in court, but it's a start." She glanced back toward the house. "And the chipped flute?" "Right here." I'd set it aside on the top shelf of the pantry behind a stack of serving platters. I showed her the chip. She photographed it with a small, quiet camera. "Has anyone else been in the house since the party?" she asked. "Plenty of people," I said lightly. "My son and his wife, a security team, a courier from my lawyer." I let the last word hang like a wind chime. Kara's pen paused. "Lawyer?" "I've updated some documents. There's been pressure." I met her eyes. "I'm not asking you to litigate family, but I wanted you to know I'm recording my competence and securing my estate." "That's smart," she said, which told me she'd sat in kitchens like mine and watched other old women pretend to be fine until fine ran out. "I can't tell you what to do about your family. I can tell you we'll pursue the toxicology in the bottle. Would you be comfortable giving a formal statement?" "Yes." I did, steady as a table that doesn't wobble. She asked clear questions. I offered clean answers. When we finished, she closed her notebook and stood. "Two things." She lifted a finger. "Don't drink anything you didn't open yourself in front of a witness, not even water at a restaurant." Second finger. "If anyone tries to medical evaluate you against your will, call me. It happens more than you think." "I know," I said, "and thank you." At the door she hesitated, then added, "People get creative when they're desperate. If you feel pressure, financial, emotional, legal, document it." "I've got cameras now," I said, "and a stack of legal pads." After she left, I stood in the quiet and listened to the house breathe. The clock in the hall ticked. A truck down the block beeped as it backed up. I poured coffee and watched the front camera feed. Detective Lewis drove away. A minute later, a silver SUV turned the corner and slowed in front of my house. Brittany's car. She didn't stop, just coasted by and kept going, like a shark checking the shoreline. At 10, my phone buzzed. A text from Nora Blake. "Preliminary packet ready. Can I swing by?" 10 minutes later, Nora stepped into my study with a slim folder and the satisfied exhaustion of someone who'd taught a database to confess. She smelled faintly of wet wool and printer toner, a comforting combination. "How fast do you sleep?" I asked her. "When there's this kind of story, I don't," she said, and handed me the folder. "Highlights." I slid out the first page. It was a one-sheet overview, clean and brutal as an invoice. Daniel, personal checking below 1,000, credit cards near their limits. A business line of credit he'd rolled 3 times in 2 years. A bridge loan coming due in 3 weeks with a lender whose email address ended with a generic domain that sent up red flags. Brittany. Boutique 2 quarters behind on rent. A cash advance loan with fees that made me want to salt the earth where the lender lived. An online order from 6 weeks ago for aconite root extract. Herbal tincture. I stared at that line until the letters stopped marching. Nora tapped it with her finger. "Many of these natural remedy tinctures are nonsense. Aconite is not. It's illegal to sell it for ingestion in most places, but online vendors do what online vendors do. Can we tie it to Brittany beyond the order? It's shipped to a P.O. box registered to her boutique, Nora said. The box is paid from her business account. The delivery scan is time-stamped Monday before the party. My mouth tasted like copper. What about Daniel? His firm's receivables are optimistic. His payables are real. She slid over a second page. Also, someone did a soft pull on your credit last week. It's technically legal through some services if they check the right box that says they have a permissible purpose, but the IP address routes back to Brittany's boutique Wi-Fi. I exhaled. Not surprise. Confirmation, which is a colder cousin. I set up monitoring on both of them, Nora said. Public records, court filings, new credit lines. If anything moves, we'll know. You also asked me to look for doctors in their orbit. There's a geriatrician they follow on social media who advertises expedited competency evaluations for facility admissions. The reviews are polarized. Convenient, I said. Nora looked around at the cameras, then at me. What do you want to do? I closed the folder and felt the smooth paper under my palm, like a vow. I want to keep standing exactly where I'm standing and let them think I'm backing up, and I want to give them something so attractive they can't not touch it. Bait, she said, satisfied. Bait. I considered the props in my life the way a stage manager considers an Act 2 set change. The pastry box Daniel had left on the counter sat in the recycling bin, lid uncreased. I fished it out and put it on the study desk. Nora raised an eyebrow. Patisserie espionage? Everyone opens a pastry box, I said. Even saints. We drafted that afternoon. I opened a new checking account at a bank I didn't usually use, one branch over, good coffee, eager manager, and deposited $100. Leonard drafted a power of attorney that looked grand and sweeping, but, in paragraph 4, limited authority to that single account and excluded every other form of asset under the sun. No securities, no property, no trusts. It even sunsetted in 90 days. The title read Durable Power of Attorney, because names matter more than terms to people who knit schemes quickly. We set up online access to the decoy account through a new email with a honey token, a unique address that pings if anyone tries to use it. I put the username and password on a sheet titled Financials Temporary Login in my tidy hand and slid it into the pastry box beneath a layer of pristine tissue paper. I labeled the box Receipts and set it on the kitchen desk where I keep coupons I never use and menus for takeout I never order. Nora watched me with a professional's affection. You're dangerous, she said. I'm alive, I answered. There's overlap. At 3, Daniel texted, We'll be there in an hour with the Silver Pines packet and the admissions lady can do a Zoom to answer questions. He added a heart. The heart felt like an insult to punctuation. I wore a cardigan that makes me look soft. I put on my reading glasses and let them slide a little down my nose. Performance is not lying when it's a shield. When the doorbell chimed, the camera showed me Brittany in cream and gold, Daniel in slate and apology. They came in on a coordinated breeze of concern. Brittany carried a leather folio that looked like it had been waiting for a meeting. Daniel set a bakery bag on the counter out of habit, then blinked at the pastry box on the desk like a dog noticing a mirror. We thought you might want lunch, he said. I already had something, I said, cheerful, but thank you. Brittany spread the Silver Pines brochure across my table. The photos were all morning light and water aerobics, a chorus of silver-haired people with the same smile. Isn't it lovely? She trilled. And the best part is their medical team. You won't have to worry. I don't worry now, I said. I plan. She hid a flinch by producing a form. There's just a little paperwork to get you in the queue. The admissions coordinator can answer questions, but she'll need a preliminary file. On cue, her phone rang. She put it on speaker. A bright voice introduced herself as Haley from Silver Pines. We did this little dance. I asked about the entrance fee, and Haley said it was fully refundable upon move-out, less a small processing charge. I asked about their competency evaluations, and Haley said they partnered with trusted providers. She avoided the word required. I asked whether a power of attorney was a condition of residency, and Haley said, most residents find it helpful, which is how salespeople say, we make it feel mandatory. Wonderful, I said, and smiled at my son. I'll bring the documents tomorrow. They left buoyed, hopeful fish who'd found a glittering lure. After they went, the house felt like a theater after curtains. The air still held applause, but the work was backstage. I took out my legal pad and wrote a script for the next 24 hours. Evening brought rain, the kind that makes the leaves look varnished. At 6, Brittany texted, "We're coming over to cook you dinner, no takebacks." A smiley face with a chef hat. They arrived like a television pilot, the devoted adult children, the sprightly mother. I let Brittany take over my stove. The kitchen camera watched her hands. Twice she turned the burners higher than the recipe required. Twice I turned them down, careless as if I weren't noticing. She chattered while she chopped peppers. Daniel opened wine without asking if I wanted any and poured 2 glasses. For himself and Brittany. He watched me over the rim. I had a fresh bottle of sparkling water on the counter, and a glass I poured myself. They saw me open it. They saw me drink. You teach people how to treat you. You also teach them what you now refuse to be. After dinner, while we were standing at the sink, Brittany reached for the knobs on the stove and brushed her sleeve against one, so it turned toward ignite, then laughed as if at a joke she hadn't meant to make. The burner didn't catch. The camera saw the attempt. The gas detector on the wall hummed and stayed green. When they left, I watched them on the driveway cam. They stood between their car doors in the rain, faces lit by the glow of Brittany's phone as if they were telling ghost stories. My phone buzzed a moment later, an automated alert from the Honey Token email. Access attempt detected from an IP address matching my guest Wi-Fi. I looked to the desk. The pastry box sat precisely where I'd left it, the tissue paper folded back a fraction of an inch. I slept well and woke earlier than usual. Fear is an alarm clock. Purpose is better. At 9, the bank pinged. New login from an iPhone, Greenwood neighborhood. I poured coffee and watched the feed. Daniel's SUV rolling up punctually at 10. Brittany's hair perfect even under a hood. They didn't know the camera at the front door could hear too. Most people underestimate microphones. "We should press the doctor," Brittany whispered as they waited. "Get on her calendar today. The sooner we have the evaluation, the sooner Silver Pines takes her." "She's my mother," Daniel said. He sounded like he was trying to convince himself of the sentence and of its absolution. "It's safer for her there. And safer for us," she said. "That bridge loan—" "Don't say it," he snapped. And then the bell chimed. I let them in and did my little performance. Cardigan, glasses. Brittany smelled like new leather and something floral that tried too hard. They took seats like jurors about to be sequestered. I brought a folder to the table and set it down deliberately. "What's that?" Daniel asked. "My documents," I said. "I spoke to my lawyer. He sent me a power of attorney. I know you said it was precautionary." I slid it across the table. "I prefer to be the one doing the precautions." Brittany's eyes lit the way a slot machine does when it wants to keep you there. She didn't reach for the paper. She looked at Daniel, and he did. He read quickly, lips barely moving. He didn't make it to paragraph 4. They never do. "This is good," he said. "We can use this with the admissions office." "I thought so," I said. "Words can be honest and still be camouflage." Brittany cleared her throat. "If you're comfortable, we can also take this to your banks so they know to talk to us. It can be confusing for tellers when—" "I'm not confused," I said sweetly, "but you're welcome to make copies." I stood. "The copier's in the study. Help yourselves." They took the folder like it was a live thing they wanted to keep from noticing it was dead. I watched them cross to the study on my phone's camera app while I wiped a perfectly clean counter. In the study, Daniel opened the pastry box and lifted the tissue paper. He saw the neatly written username and password, and his face did a small, private thing. He took a photo. He replaced the tissue more carefully than a surgeon relays skin. Back at the table, Brittany made a show of admiring the flowers in the foyer as if the moment could hide in fragrance. "We should schedule the Silver Pines signing for tomorrow," she said brightly. "They move fast on those openings." "So do I," said, "but not on an empty stomach." I glanced at the bakery bag she'd set down. "What did you bring?" "Croissants," she beamed, "from Le Vieux." "Lovely," I said. I didn't move toward them. She laughed lightly and said, "Oh, of course, you don't eat before 11. She'd invented that rule just now to explain away my lack of interest. When they left, my phone buzzed again with an alert. Online login to the decoy account, transfer attempt initiated. A second later, another alert. Transfer blocked. Daily limit exceeded. 90 seconds after that, the honey token chimed with a password change attempt. Nothing would go through. Leonard had set limits so tight a gnat couldn't crawl through, and the bank fraud team had flagged anything more than $50 as a fire alarm. But the point wasn't theft, it was touch. They couldn't not. At noon, Nora called. "They tried to move 4800 twice. Your bank called me and Leonard, as arranged. We politely asked the manager to preserve the logs. We also got the IP and the device fingerprint. Brittany's iPhone, same as last night. And Daniel." "He didn't initiate the transfer," Nora said, "but he took a photo of the login. We have that image hitting his cloud. He's not as careful as he thinks." I thanked her and hung up. I stood at the window and watched clouds muscle across the sky. I had the queer sensation of seeing my life as a set with lights warmed to scene setting. The props were in their places. The chipped flute behind the platters, the bottle on its way to a lab, the pastry box emptied of innocence, the cameras catching the right angles. Pinch, my mind said, naming the structure I'd used in 100 business pitches. The story's middle applied pressure. Good stories are honest about physics. At 2, Brittany texted, "Can we swing by at 5 to take you to Silver Pines to sign? The admissions coordinator is staying late for us." She added a sparkle emoji that made me want to wash my hands. I wrote back, 5 works. Bring the doctor you like. I want everything done properly. Then I called Leonard. "They're bringing a friendly evaluator," I said. "Can you email me the cognitive assessment I took yesterday? I want it printed and stamped with the date." "It's already in your inbox," he said. "And Elaine?" Officer Lewis called me. She picked up the bottle. "You did right keeping it cold. If there's a traceable concentration, the lab will find it." "Good," I said, and felt a small, wicked joy. At 4:50, they arrived with a woman in a white coat whose name tag identified her as Dr. Sims. She had the bedside manner of a ring light. She vectored her smile toward me. "I can do a quick screen before we go," she said, "just to make sure you're safe to sign and the facility is comfortable." "I took a full neurocognitive assessment yesterday with a board-certified geriatric psychiatrist," I said, holding out the stamped report. "For my own peace of mind, you're welcome to add whatever notes you like, but I won't be taking a new test today." Dr. Sims took the paper and scanned it. It was the length and weight of professionalism. Clock drawing, list recall, executive function. It named my score in crisp numerals and included a paragraph declaring me fully competent to manage my personal and financial affairs. She made an O shape with her mouth and smoothed the page like it might wrinkle and hide an escape clause. "That's thorough," she said. "I am," I said, and the smile I gave her would have cut glass. Brittany's eyes flickered, quick as a bad poker tell. Daniel tried to recover by tugging his jacket cuff. "We should still go sign the admission hold," he said, "just to be safe." "Of course," I said. "I wouldn't want to lose my spot." On the drive to Silver Pines, I watched the world go by in slices. The nursery with mums the color of sunsets, the martial arts studio with kids in white G's, the billboard selling reverse mortgages to people with hair my color. We pulled into a parking lot where all the cars were clean and all the trees were young. Inside, the lobby was a study in beige. A fountain whispered. The admissions coordinator, Haley of the telephone voice, appeared with a binder and a pen so heavy it implied signatures would be weightlifting. "We're so excited to welcome you," she said to me and no one else. "Let's just get the entrance fee deposit and a few signatures." I flipped through the binder. The deposit was refundable less a processing charge that had grown larger in person than it had sounded on the phone. The contract included a clause about medical necessity reviews that might as well have been titled, "We can keep you." I read every line while Brittany made little noises of pleasure, like we were opening gifts. Daniel checked his watch, which only ever tells the time you wish it would. When I reached the page about financial representatives, I lifted the pen and said, "This looks fine." I signed where it said, "I should," and for the deposit, I wrote a check from the decoy account, $100. Haley blinked but accepted it with the glazed grace of someone trained to avoid conflict until a supervisor appears. "We'll need the full deposit within 3 business days," she chirped. "Of course," I said. "As soon as my agent processes the transfer." I slid over a copy of the decoy power of attorney. "Here you go." Brittany exhaled as if stepping into warm water. On the way home, the car felt smaller. The clouds outside the windshield stacked like an audience. Brittany chatted about move-in coordinators, about the amazing book club, about how I'd love all the activities. Daniel drove and stared. The dashboard readout said 5:42 p.m. and then 5:43 p.m. The numbers ticked like a countdown. When we pulled up to my house, the porch light was on, a timer, but it looked like welcome. They walked me to the door like pallbearers of politeness. "Sleep well," Brittany said. "I always do," I said. They backed down the steps. On my phone, an alert pulsed from the bank. Transfer request again, declined again, fraud team notified again. The honey token chimed a 3rd time. Someone had tried to reset the password for the decoy email and failed the security question, "Where did you spend your first bonus?" A question no one would guess because the answer was a kind of lettuce I bought myself in Paris to celebrate being able to pay rent and also eat. Inside, I set the signed Silver Pines packet on my desk. I put the pen next to it like a prop at its mark. I checked the cameras. Study and kitchen, front door and driveway. The night lens made everything green at the edges, the way night always is in memories. I made a cup of tea from a box with an intact seal. I took it to the back porch and listened to the steady drip of rain from the gutters. In the yard, a rabbit chewed the wet grass like it had nowhere else to be. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Nora. Got the logs. Brittany initiated the transfers from her phone in your driveway. Daniel took photos but didn't touch the account. Detective Lewis asked if she can swing by tomorrow to pick up copies of the Silver Pines paperwork. I typed back, "Yes to Kara." Add this. Doctor attempted to evaluate me without reviewing yesterday's assessment. Copy of that assessment given. Nora sent a thumbs up emoji because sometimes brevity is the correct muscle. I went inside and locked the door. I checked the stove knobs. Off, 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 off. I looked at the pastry box and then at the folder where the decoy POA had slept before it started its work. Hooks were set. Line was taut. Fish tugged. I sat at my kitchen table and wrote another list. Lists keep fear from smearing. Meet Kara. Hand over copies. Stay factual. Keep the Silver Pines deposit small. Let their urgency outpace prudence. Do not drink anything not opened by me and not in front of me. Keep the cameras rolling. Leave one more easy door ajar, the kind a thief can't resist. I capped my pen and smiled at nothing. Pinch is where the hero's world squeezes. I had squeezed back without showing my hands. When I turned off the kitchen light, the house exhaled. In bed, I slept the sleep of a woman who had set her trap and still knew how to wake at the smallest sound. Somewhere around midnight, a car idled on the street outside and then slid away. The rain stopped around 2. At 3, the bank pinged. Another attempt, smaller, as if testing the wires. The alert went to Leonard, to Nora, to me. It also went, because we'd asked for it, to a fraud investigator at the district attorney's office who had a soft spot for grandmothers and a hard spot for financial crime. In the morning, I would pour myself coffee, and I would open the door to Detective Lewis, and I would hand her a neat packet that said, "Without my having to, they are pressing. I am holding." And between those two facts stretches the tightrope I'll walk until this is over. I woke to the sound of tires whispering along wet asphalt and to the first honest thought I'd let myself have since the party. If Daniel is in this, the wound is not survivable in the old way. You don't stitch what has to be set. At 9 sharp, Detective Kara Lewis appeared again, rain freckling her blazer. I met her at the door with a manila folder as squared and orderly as a courtroom exhibit. "Morning," she said. "May I?" "In the kitchen," I said. "It's where we arrange facts." We sat. I slid the folder to her. Copies of the Silver Pines deposit, the decoy power of attorney, the stamped neurocognitive assessment, and a printout of bank alerts with timestamps. I added a sticky note with the honey token access pings and the iPhone device fingerprint Nora had wrestled from the logs. Kara flipped through, face unreadable in the way that makes juries lean forward. "This is clean," she said. "And," she tapped the assessment, "useful." "Useful," I echoed, hearing how my own voice had hardened into something like tempered glass. She set her pen down. "The lab's preliminary on your bottle came through early this morning." Her tone went neutral, a surgeon's consent form voice. "It contains aconitine at a concentration that's not accidental. It's not residue from plants or cross-contamination. It's an addition." "Mixed," I said. The word tasted like metal. "We're moving on it," she continued. "There's an online order we can tie to your daughter-in-law's business. That's likely probable cause for a search of her boutique and devices. But for an arrest—" "Intent," I said. "Chain. Coercion." She gave me the briefest, kindest nod. "Plus we have to decide what to do about your son." We let his name sit between us, unsaid but very present. "Do you want to know what I hope?" she asked. "What?" "I hope he panicked after seeing what happened and is now trying to keep his head above water," she said. "That doesn't absolve anything, but it's different than picking up a vial and planning a death. The law cares about that difference." "So do I," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "But I won't let either of them make me smaller to make their lives bigger." Kara closed the folder. "Then let's each do our jobs. You keep documenting pressure. Let me be the one to push. If they try to force signatures, record it. If they bring another doctor, refuse and keep that stamped assessment in reach. If anything feels like it might tip from persuasion into threat, call me. I don't need an invitation to knock." She stood. At the door she paused. "One more thing. Consider changing your locks." "They're being rekeyed at 2. I said. "I've learned to love a good locksmith." She smiled with half her mouth and left, rain breathing on her shoulders as she stepped into it. When the house stilled, I picked up the phone and dialed Riverside General. "Can I have the room for Marjorie Hale?" I asked, and they put me through. A nurse answered. "She's awake," the nurse said, "a little shaky." I stopped for flowers because I am not a monster even if the world has asked me to be harder. Hydrangeas, blue as promises. The nurse's station smelled like citrus hand gel and microwaved soup. In her room, Marjorie looked smaller, her skin thinner, like a shirt washed too many times. Her eyes were all there, though, clear as old glass. "Elaine," she breathed. Lord, what a week. I set the hydrangeas in the window. "How do you feel?" "Like I danced with a thunderstorm," she said. Her voice had that New Jersey rasp that can cut or cradle depending on the day. The doctors said it was poison. She watched my face like it was an answer sheet. It was, I said. I pulled a chair up so my knee touched her bed rail. Marjorie, I need you to think carefully. At my house, before you fell, did you notice anything unusual about the champagne? I barely tasted it, she said. I was about to sip when Brittany... She stopped, tangled her fingers in the blanket, then smoothed them, ashamed at the nervous tell. Elaine, I'm not a tattletale, and I'm not stupid, and I'm not blind, but I am a mother. Those things wrestle. So are you, I said, and mothers who see danger get to say it aloud. She swallowed, throat clicking. On the drive over, she said slowly, Brittany kept checking her phone. She put it on speaker for a minute when she was digging for lipstick. Daniel's voice came through. She held my gaze, and the room felt suddenly like it had fewer molecules in it. He said, use the chipped one, so she thinks it's hers. Don't mess this up. Brittany said, I've got it. Then she took the call off speaker and hissed at him for making her more nervous. My hand closed hard around the bed rail. That small "the" before chipped one, the way we say it when it's a thing we all know, landed in me like a key sliding home. Marjorie looked down at her own hands as if they might produce an alibi. I told myself I misheard, she whispered, or that it was a joke. People say awful, jokey things, and then they stop being funny. I didn't want to be the kind of person who imagines monsters where there are only messy people. Monsters are often messy people, I said gently. Thank you for telling me. I'm sorry, she said, fierce all at once. I raised a daughter who can be greedy and shallow, but murder... The word looked wrong in the air. I didn't make her that. You made her human, I said. What she chooses after that is on her. She blinked back tears. I listen to those true crime podcasts, she blurted, as if confessing to something worse. They always say to document. I took a picture of the little bottle in her purse while she was in your powder room at the party. She'd put it back in. It had a label. I didn't think about fingerprints then. I just thought about proof. She fumbled with her phone and handed it to me. The photo filled the screen, a tiny brown glass vial with a white label. The label read aconite tincture, external use, and a vendor name that might as well have been a P.O. box with delusions of respectability. May I forward this to Detective Lewis? I asked. Yes, she said, baring her teeth when she smiled. Please. I sent it. The phone pinged in my hand almost immediately. Kara. Got it. Helps for warrant affidavit. Good work, both of you. You may get a call from Detective Lewis, I told Marjorie. She's good. She'll take care with you. I want to do what is right, Marjorie said, even if it makes Thanksgiving awful. She met my eyes. Do you think Daniel... I think I needed to hear the word chipped from someone else's mouth, I said. Now I have. She nodded, the relief like a wince. I squeezed her hand and left before Brittany arrived to do her dutiful daughter rounds. Some mercies are strategic. In the parking lot, the sky had the tin color that makes you put your shoulders up. I sat in my car with my hands on the wheel and let myself feel it. Grief, like an internal bruise you only notice when you reach for something. Daniel's voice, cool as a tile floor. Use the chipped one. He'd never liked that I kept it, joked that it looked cheap in photos. A dozen small memories made new shapes and spelled a word I'd been refusing to read. I called Leonard. Midpoint, I said, because he'd heard me talk story structure too many times to not get it. Give it to me, he said. I did. The call on speaker, the phrase the chipped one, Marjorie's photo, the bottle's lab results, the attempted transfers, the boutique Wi-Fi IP, the lock change at 2. On the other end, paper rustled. Okay, he said at last. You're right. We're at the turn. Defense to offense. If you want to set a sting, we can do it without stepping outside the law. I do, I said. It felt like saying I do at an altar, and also like signing a delivery receipt for a package with a snake in it. We'll coordinate with Detective Lewis, Leonard said. She can't entrap. You can't entrap, but you can document. I can host a signing here for something that looks like it gives them everything. You forget a copy in your bag. They find what they think they need to execute additional transfers. Meanwhile, we make sure the only thing they can touch is theater. Said it, I said. My voice sounded like it came from a woman I had only just become and who had been there all along. I called Nora next. Pull the thread on Daniel's bridge loan, I said. Who holds it and what happens if he defaults? She whistled softly. A guy named Finnerty fronts it, she said 10 minutes later, calling me back before I'd even finished checking my mailbox. He's a face for a lender that looks like a holding company with a mailbox in Delaware and muscle in Union City. 3 weeks to due date. There's a clause that if he misses, they can confession of judgment him and sweep his business accounts. They've done it to others. So, I said, if he doesn't deliver something large and liquid by then, men start knocking. So, she agreed. Desperate people make bolder plays in week 3. Good, I said, and meant it the way a chess player means seeing an opponent overcommit a queen. Back home, the locksmiths arrived. 2 young men who smelled like graphite and rain and called me ma'am, but were competent enough that I forgave them. They changed the deadbolts, rekeyed the back door, and showed me how the new keypad entry logged every code use with a timestamp. Consider it a diary of who loves you enough to show up, one said, not unkind. After they left, I stood at the kitchen island with a yellow legal pad and wrote the sting the way I'd write a project plan. Thursday, 11 a.m., meeting at Leonard's office for trust consolidation. Invite Daniel and Brittany to help. Cameras in conference room, audio with consent, mine and Leonard's, live notary, Nora's colleague, to make it feel real. Remove all actual instruments from the conference room. Present only decoy documents. A master trust that in paragraph 6 assigns management authority to an agent defined on a separate piece of paper. That separate paper is blank. Nothing operational without my signature. Nothing will have it. Leave my tote bag slightly open with a labeled folder visible. Online banking, vault logins. Inside, duplicate of the decoy login for the $100 account and a fabricated custodian portal for a fake brokerage with a door that leads nowhere. Honey tokens embedded. Before meeting, email myself and Leonard time-stamped instructions that I do not authorize any transfers during or after the meeting. After meeting, forget the tote under my chair, let them carry it to the elevator. Security footage to supplement. Call Kara from the curb, let her know we may have movement. I added a note at the bottom. Keep your face calm. Don't try to win the conversation. Let them talk. Greed monologues. The doorbell chimed at 4. I checked the camera. Daniel stood there alone, which always made him look younger and therefore more dangerous, like a boy you want to forgive. I opened the door, but not the storm door. He looked at the new keypad and then at me. New locks, he said. I like to sleep, I said. Preparation is the lullaby. He closed his eyes, not in prayer, in inventory. Can I come in? Of course. In the kitchen, he didn't sit. People who don't sit want to keep their options open. Mom, he began, and the single syllable had a history to it. I know this week has been dramatic. Life has tone, I said. This one's minor key. He tried for a smile and abandoned it. Brittany is flailing, he said. She's scared about her mother, and when she's scared, she blusters. She pushes. Does she order poison on the internet when she's scared? I asked, without heat. He flinched as if I'd pushed him down a step he hadn't seen. She told me it was a homeopathic thing, he said, feeble. She said you were under stress and something gentle might... Daniel, I said, and the name was a door closing. He swallowed. I panicked, he said, softer. About everything. The business, the loan, the timing with your sale. He rubbed his forehead as if there were words written under the skin he could smudge into new meanings. I said things I shouldn't have said. On the phone. Things that sound awful if you take them out of context. Like use the chipped one? I asked. He looked up. The color went out of his face in a neat, even way, like grayscale descending. She told you. She didn't have to, I said. Marjorie did. He put both hands on the counter and leaned. I never wanted... He stopped. I waited. I've learned that the words that follow never wanted are the honest ones. I never wanted you dead, he said. And there it was, a sentence that made me feel the cold of the tile through rubber soles. I wanted you safe. We're out of rope, Mom. Silver Pines. It's structured. It would mean we could help. Help yourself, I said. He didn't argue. That did more work than any protest might have. We looked at one another like two people at either end of a bridge that is going to fall and who are calculating whether to run or to kneel and hold on. I'm going to Leonard's tomorrow, I said at last. To consolidate accounts. It's time for less scatter. Relief and greed rose on his face like two tides, surprised to be synchronized. Do you want us there? What? To make sure everything gets executed? Please, I said, as if I had forgiven something. When he left, he stood on the porch a full minute, maybe remembering being 12 and asking if he could camp in the backyard with a friend and me, saying yes. The porch light caught the new key cylinder and made it shine hard as a coin. That evening, I called Marjorie again, not because I needed anything, but because I needed her to know she hadn't thrown her words into a void. She sounded stronger. I told the detective exactly what I told you, she said. I thought my mouth would dry up, but it didn't. It felt like I'd been saving water. Good, I said. There's more to do, but you've done something solid. Do you hate her? She asked, small for the first time. I don't have room for hate and strategy at the same time, I said. I'll hate later if there's any left over. After I hung up, I set the stage. I ironed a blouse so crisp it could be a boundary. I put my assessment copy in a leather folder with my initials, territory marking. I charged my phone and my panic pendant, set the charger in my purse like a talisman. I moved the pastry box to a more obvious shelf and tucked a different sheet inside. This one, a printed passwords list that led only to dead ends. The cameras watched, tireless little witnesses. I slept poorly, not because I was afraid, but because my mind kept rehearsing the pauses. What to leave unsaid, when to let silence work. I dreamed of the chipped flute, not in my hand, but in Daniel's, his thumb finding the familiar nick as if he'd made it himself. Morning arrived the way morning always does, indifferent then helpful. I put on the crisp blouse, trousers that made me feel like a blade, and the cardigan that makes other people mistake me. I drove to Leonard's office with both hands on the wheel and the radio off, a habit I've developed when I need to hear myself. The receptionist offered me water. I declined. Leonard met me in the hall with a smile that had steel in it. Conference room A, he said, our set. Conference room A was all glass and city view, and the kind of silence that says bills get paid here. The notary Nora had sourced sat neatly at one end, pen uncapped, stamp ready, cheeks pink with the earnestness of people who respect paperwork. The documents sat in a stack that smelled faintly of ink and strategy. Elaine, Leonard said, handing me a sheet, this is the memorandum of understanding we talked about, which was to say a document about documents, clean, impressive, operationally inert, without a missing page that did not exist. We'd just finished the walkthrough when the glass door opened and Daniel and Brittany arrived. She wore ambition as perfume. He wore apology as a jacket. The notary rose with the ritual respect we reserve for the theater of signatures. Good to see you both, Leonard said, voice pastoral. We'll keep this simple? We did. We kept it simple in the way a fisherman keeps bait wiggling. Leonard explained that we were consolidating instruments for ease of management and that temporary agency would allow a seamless transition during any medical episodes, at which point Brittany made a sympathetic sound that earned her no points. I signed where it didn't matter. I initialed pages with importance-laden headers whose paragraphs were diet versions of reality. I slipped my tote bag under my chair and left the folder labeled Online Banking Vault Logins, visible enough to be a rumor. Greed monologues. I didn't try to hurry them. I let Daniel ask procedural questions in a voice that made it clear he understood none of them and intended to understand even less. I let Brittany praise the wisdom of getting ahead of the mess and say, "We just want to help," in a tone that used help like a synonym for hold. I kept my face calm. I let silence show them their outlines. We were nearly done when Leonard stood to grab the client copy of the agency definition, and I stood too, following him to his office as if that were required. I left the tote under the chair. Through the glass, in the reflection of the city, I watched Daniel lean down, slide his hand into the bag, and lift the folder just enough to see the label. He didn't take it. He didn't have to. Phones are cameras, and cameras are confessions. He snapped a picture of the first page, username, password, a fake portal URL that would take him nowhere but to an investigator's attention. Brittany touched his sleeve. He slid the folder back, careful as a man who has decided what to do next. His face in the glass looked young and old at once. We returned. Leonard handed me a blank sheet titled Agency Designation and said, "We'll finalize this next week," as if we had a schedule anyone but us understood. The notary stamped the memorandum with a satisfying mechanical thunk. Courtrooms don't own all the theater. In the elevator afterward, I realized I'd left my tote. "Go," Brittany said too quickly. "We'll get it." They did, because people love being useful when the usefulness feels like access. They met me in the lobby with the bag, eyes bright like children who'd found a surprise they weren't supposed to open yet. I thanked them with the grace of a woman who does not know she's just rehearsed the last lines of one act and the first lines of another. On the sidewalk, I called Kara. "Movement," I said. They photographed a document with decoy credentials. Expect noise at the bank and at a fake brokerage URL within the hour. "Got it," she said. "We have fraud at DA on alert, and I've filed the affidavit for the boutique warrant. The judge is on lunch, but I'm optimistic." "Good," I said. "Also, Marjorie's statement contains the phrase, 'the chipped one.' It's in your inbox." "Solidifies our narrative," she said, and a cop using the word narrative always steadies me. I went home and made tea from a sealed bag. I sat at my kitchen table and listened to the house settle and to my own breathing and to the faint hum of a day that had shifted under its own weight. At 2:17 p.m., the honey token pinged. Decoy portal accessed from a Greenwood IP, Daniel's phone. At 2:20 p.m., the bank alert chimed. Attempt to add external account, blocked. At 2:28 p.m., a browser agent matching Brittany's boutique iPad tried to log into the custodian portal. The attempt fired a silent email to DA's fraud team with the IP and time. At 2:33 p.m., Nora texted, "Finnerty's guy just called Daniel. Where's my repayment?" Timer ticking. I stood at the window and watched a neighbor teach a child to ride a bike. The child wobbled, furious and determined. The adult jogged alongside, one hand at the small of the back, letting go and then catching, letting go and then catching. I used to think mothering was that hand. Today it felt like walking away from the bike path entirely and building a fence. At 3:05 p.m., my phone lit with Daniel's name. I let it ring twice and answered. "Mom," he said. He had found a new voice, this one painted in urgent transparency. "We just got a call from the admissions office. They need the full deposit by end of day to hold the unit." "I wrote them a check yesterday," I said mildly, "for the deposit." "It was a placeholder," he said. "You need to transfer the rest." I'm having Leonard wire it tomorrow, I lied, warm as a bath. He's very particular about bank wires. Tomorrow won't work, he said. And there was the edge. You have to do it now. Use your online portal. We can help. I don't want to risk a large transfer on an unsecured connection, I said. I'll go into the branch in the morning. Silence. Then, you're being stubborn, he said, and said it the way you say, you're being selfish to a child who won't share a toy. Thank you, I said, not because he was right, but because he had given me the gift of letting me stop pretending this was a conversation about my well-being. I'll speak with Leonard in the morning. He hung up without goodbye. It scraped something inside me raw, how quickly we can forget the choreography of small kindnesses. The phone buzzed again almost immediately. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, my voicemail transcribed, "This is Dr. Sims. Just following up. Per facility policy, we need to confirm cognitive status. If today works, I can stop by to do a quick..." I deleted it and forwarded the number to Kara with the note, "Persistent physician. Attempt to evaluate post-assessment. Refused." At 4:12 p.m., the doorbell rang. I checked the camera. Brittany stood alone, makeup a shade more masked than usual, smile held like a tray. I opened the door but left the storm door latched. "Hi," I said. "Elaine," she said, brightness pitched too high. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd see if you needed help with the transfer." "I don't," I said pleasantly. "Can I come in?" she asked. "I prefer not," I said, and let the sentence be the whole world. Her smile held for 3 seconds and then melted into a shape closer to her face. "You're making this hard," she said. "We're trying to help you." "Your help makes me sick," I said evenly. "We have documentation on that." Color rose up her neck like a bad idea. "Do you know what happens if you fall?" she asked, switching tactics so fast she left skid marks. "If you hit your head, if you forget your stove, you need a place with people." "I have people," I said, and thought of Kara, Leonard, Nora, and the locksmith who'd called me ma'am and meant it. "Good afternoon, Brittany." I closed the door. She stood there for a long time, long enough for the camera to capture her face, slide through 3 expressions, sweet, stern, and something like calculation. Then she left. At 5:01 p.m., Kara texted, "Warrant granted. Boutique search in AM. We'll coordinate so you're not alone if there's fallout." I exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. At dusk, I took the chipped flute from the pantry and held it in my hand. My thumb found the nick. I thought about weddings, toasts, birthdays, about the stupid number of photos that Glass had photobombed by being ever so slightly imperfect. I wrapped it in a dish towel and put it in the safe with my passport and a photograph of Daniel at 6, gap-toothed, holding a Lego spaceship he'd built without instructions. I put the safe back on its shelf and pushed it all the way in. Dinner was soup from a can, warmed in a pot whose handle I trust. The house breathed. The cameras watched. The pendant blinked a small, steady heartbeat. My list from the morning had only one unchecked box: decide whether to hate. I penciled later beside it. I slept. When I woke at 3, it wasn't fear that woke me. It was the clean click of resolve. I had moved from defense to offense. I had proof of Brittany's hand and Daniel's knowing. The law had a path and I had a plan. The trap was set, and more importantly, I had chosen to spring it not from revenge, but from the ordinary dignity of wanting to live unthreatened in my own house. In the morning, we would move, each of us along the lines we had drawn. They toward what they believed was control, me toward a reveal I would carry like a flag. And at the far end of it, whether family gathered around tables or around court benches, I would still be the person who used a chipped glass on purpose so as not to hand it to a guest by mistake. The midpoint is where the story admits its true topic. Mine was no longer survival. It was custody of my life, my name, my fortune, and the story itself. I wrote it at the top of a fresh page, custody. Then I underlined it twice and went back to sleep. Detective Lewis texted at 7:41 a.m., rolling on boutique warrant. You don't need to be here. I responded with a thumbs up because the emoji kept me from trying to narrate a prayer. I made tea from a sealed sachet and stood at the kitchen sink, watching the street like it might deliver a verdict. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number, then a woman's voice with too much starch in it. This is Haley from Silver Pines. Just checking whether your deposit will arrive today. We're at capacity and holding that unit is costly. I understand, I said. Given recent events, I'm reassessing. Please consider my hold tentative. A pause in which she calculated which script to use. If we release the unit, it may not be available again. Scarcity is a good sales tactic, I said gently. Not a good reason to move. She recovered into brightness. Of course. Call if you need anything. 2 minutes after that, the front camera caught Brittany beelining up my walk, hood up, eyes flat. I didn't open the door. I let the intercom do the civility. Police are at my shop, she said without hello. Do you know anything about that? Yes, I said. They told me they were serving a warrant. For what? She demanded. This is harassment. This is... A judge signed it, I said. That's the opposite of harassment. She leaned close to the camera, the image warping her features. If you wanted to hurt us, congratulations. I wanted not to be killed, I said. Everything else is a side effect. She exhaled a ragged line and then the screen went empty. I watched her stalk back to her car and pull away too fast, tires spitting water like contempt. At 9:12 a.m., Kara texted, recovered brown glass vial labeled aconite tincture, external use in a purse at boutique. Also shipping docs to P.O. Box and browser searches. Aconitine solubility alcohol. Monkshood toxic dose adults. How to mask bitter taste. Will image devices. I sat down because my knees had opinions. By 10, Daniel called. I answered because avoidance is rarely strategy. They're raiding the shop, he said, voice tight and childlike. They're executing a warrant, I said. And they have reason. Reason? His laugh broke in the middle. Mom, this is getting out of hand. Brittany didn't... She ordered poison, I said. She doctored my glass. Use the chipped one were your words. Silence like a cliff face. When he spoke again, his voice had a new layer in it, something like fatigue under fear. I said a thing on a call I shouldn't have, he said. I have said a lot of things I shouldn't have. But I am standing here telling you. I don't need you to tell me, I said. I have the lab report. I have the vial. I have the searches. I have the bank logs. I have the phrase that flipped the story. I have a competent brain stamped by a doctor, and I have locks that like me better than you do right now. He inhaled like a man who'd been slapped and wanted to make the next breath count. Then I guess we wait for your detective to decide who we are. He hung up. At 11:03 a.m., a new number. This is Cassandra from Adult Protective Services. We received a call expressing concern about your ability to manage your affairs and a possible undue influence situation. We take all reports seriously. Come over, I said. Today. Bring whoever you like. I'll have my attorney on speaker. I have coffee I won't offer you because I don't pour for strangers anymore. She arrived at noon with a colleague and the kind of tote bag that says, we visit hard houses. I met them with my stamped assessment, the new camera feeds on my tablet, the locksmith's receipts, and a list of the last 2 days' visitors. I also had a copy of my updated directives that specifically excluded Daniel and Brittany from medical and financial decision-making. Cassandra read, nodded, asked questions tuned to catch cognitive fray. I answered with the ease of a woman who had sold a company and kept its books straight through 3 recessions. They looked around my house and saw safety. No loose rugs, working smoke detectors, a gas detector with a green light. They saw power and agency made visible. Given what you've provided, Cassandra said, we're closing this out as unfounded. Would you like us to note in your file that any concerned relative visits should be coordinated with Detective Lewis? Yes, I said. And for the record, the physician who's been circling me is not welcome without my prior written consent. She wrote that down, smiled, and left me with a card that had both a direct line and a first name written in ink. I put it in the leather folder with my initials. Territory, marked. Nora called next. Boutique cameras captured Kara's team bagging your daughter-in-law's purse. She tried to argue the vial was topical and for aches. They bagged her phone, the store iPad, and a little spiral notebook with a list of to-dos that includes doctor, eval, Silver Pines paperwork. Lists are honest, I said. Finnerty's man pinged Daniel again, she added. I got a transcript of the voicemail. We're not a bank, don't make me come looking. He's not subtle. Good. Subtlety is hard to prosecute. At 2, Kara knocked. I opened the door and let the quiet authority of a good detective steady the room. We imaged the boutique devices, she said, sitting at my table like a colleague instead of a cop. Found browser history that lines up with our timeline. The phone shows your decoy portal attempts. The iPad tried the custodian link. We'll get the rest from the forensic unit in a day or 2. What about Daniel? I asked. He's on the edges of the digital trail. Photographs of your decoy credentials, admissions emails, texts about holding the unit. The call from the car with the chipped phrase is hearsay unless Marjorie testifies, which she said she would. If he puts himself in an interview chair and tries to do the noble lie, we'll let him. Will you arrest Brittany? Not today, she said. We want to finish the imaging, get lab confirmation on the vial contents, and wrap the financial attempts into a cleaner package with DA fraud. The picture is getting coherent. We're tightening screws. Pinch, I said. That's the story term. Kara smiled like she didn't want to, but had to. Pinch, then. Meanwhile, you should expect escalation. People under pressure accelerate the last trick they believe will save them. As if on cue, my phone lit. Brittany. I let it go to voicemail. Kara nodded at it. Don't engage alone. If they show up, call me. If you consent to recordings in your home, your cameras are lawful. Keep your posted premises monitored, sign visible. It's on the front window, I said. Big as a sermon. She stood. We're getting there, Elaine. We are, I said, and felt the relief sit somewhere behind my sternum like a warm stone. When she left, the house settled into a kind of purposeful quiet. I made soup and didn't eat it. I sat with my legal pad and wrote the next plan like I was drawing a map of a familiar city. Sunday brunch invitation from Brittany just pinged. Subject line, family hearts. Accept, probable setup for at-home notary. Pla Dr. Sims, less or urgent POA, so we can help with the deposit. Let them bring the notary, insist on my copies, use decoy paperwork only. Call Kara to stage in the neighborhood. Wear the pendant. Keep the assessment in reach. Keep the camera angles clean. If they push, let the push show. Don't cry, don't explain. Say no simply. If they threaten with, we'll call someone, say, call Detective Lewis, and hand them the card. At 5, Daniel texted, Sunday at 11, we'll bring brunch. We can get the Silver Pine stuff finalized and out of your hair. Brittany added a champagne emoji. The gall would have been funny if it weren't on brand. I wrote back, 11 works. Bring your appetite. Then I sent Kara a screenshot of the invitation and time. She responded, I'll be parked 2 houses down. If you hit the pendant, dispatch already has your address flagged. I added a heart. Sometimes punctuation deserves it. Saturday slid by with the hum of a loaded spring. Marjorie called to say she'd had fresh blood drawn. The toxicologist at Riverside wanted to see elimination curves. Did you ever think we'd be women who knew that phrase? she said. I thought we'd be women who knew everything by 70, I said. Turns out the list just changes. Thank you, she said simply. For believing me even when believing me made everything worse before it got better. Thank you for saying the chipped one, I said. It did work that evidence sometimes can't do. That night, the rain lifted and left the air raw. I checked the stove. I checked the windows. I checked the safe, touching the chipped flute through the towel like a relic in a reliquary. I printed fresh copies of my assessment and left one in every room like I was stashing talismans against superstition. I slept in increments and woke each time with a clear mind, like surfacing from a shallow pool. Sunday, 10:52 a.m., the driveway cam caught the slate of Daniel's SUV. Brittany walked beside him carrying a foil-covered casserole and the endurance smile of a pageant contestant. I opened the door with the chains still latched. Looks like rain again, Brittany said brightly, although the sky was only sullen. Kitchen, I said. We'll work at the table. They came in as a unit. The notary trailed behind, an older man with a briefcase and an expression that said he was tired of documenting other people's lies. 20 seconds later, Dr. Sims materialized like a conjuring trick. White coat swapped for a wrap dress, smile unchanged. I'm just here in case we need anything clinical, she chirped. We won't, I said, handing her my stamped assessment again. But you can hold this if it makes you feel useful. She took it, smile hiccuping. Brittany set out plates and napkins, theatrically casual. Daniel stacked a neat pile of documents, a generic durable power of attorney printed from the internet, the Silver Pines financial representative form, and a pre-filled bank transfer sheet with my bank's logo and a blank amount. They hadn't even written a number. They were going to sweet-talk me into naming one. Let's eat first, Brittany said, uncovering a frittata that smelled good enough to test me. We shouldn't do big paperwork on an empty stomach. Translation: we want you soft and sated. I've already eaten, I said, pouring sparkling water into my own glass from my own sealed bottle, the sound of boundaries being carbonated. We sat. The notary cleared his throat. Ma'am, I'll need to see your identification when we get to it. You'll see it, I said, sliding my driver's license across the table so he could study the shape of my face and the dates that made it real. Brittany slid the generic POA toward me, finger on the signature line like a cleric. This is just so we can help with logistics, doctors, banks, the facility. No, I said, pleasant as iced tea. She blinked. You don't even want to read it? I read the one my lawyer prepared, I said. I've signed it. It restricts authority to a single account with $100 for emergencies. You're welcome to a copy. Silence is a revealing mirror. Brittany's face contorted through outrage and calculation until it settled on persuasion. Elaine, she said softly, leaning forward, voice dropping to the confessional register. We're drowning. I'm scared. She let the sentence tremble. You could make this so easy. I could, I said, and then I would be drowned with you. Daniel put his hand on the table in the old dad way, as if he'd learned an inherited gesture and not the responsibility that came with it. Mom, please, this is the smart move. Smart for whom? I asked. For everyone, he said, and he was almost convincing because he had convinced himself. Silver Pines keeps you safe. We handle the boring finance stuff. The doctor's right here to certify you're good to sign. I picked up my stamped assessment and tapped the date. She was here Friday, I said of Dr. Sims, and I refused because I'm not required to perform for your convenience. This says today what it will say tomorrow. I am competent. What you're describing isn't care, it's control. The notary stared at his hands like he'd suddenly discovered new lifelines there. Dr. Sims flipped my assessment over and then back as if it might have a hidden page where I apologized. Brittany pushed her chair back. We can make this ugly, she said, sugar evaporating. I can call APS right now and report that you're confused and being manipulated by a lawyer who wants fees. Do, I said. I slid Cassandra's card onto the table. Ask for Cassandra. Tell her Elaine says hello. Brittany stared at the card like it had spoken. Daniel tried one last trope. Dad would have wanted. You don't get to use your father, I said. I was married to him longer than you were his son. A car door thumped outside. Kara texted, outside. The pendant on my table blinked its small pulse. Brittany regrouped like a dancer going for the final turn. Fine, she said briskly. Then just sign the Silver Pines representative form. It doesn't give us access, it just puts our names on file. We can get the deposit in and revisit the rest later. Later, I said, and let the word be a steel door. I slid her a copy of the decoy POA, already notarized by Leonard's colleague. You have this. Use it for what it allows. If you try to use it for anything else, the bank will call the police, who are parked down the street. She barked a laugh. You're bluffing. The doorbell rang. Daniel jerked. The notary looked relieved. Brittany's smile returned like a bad penny. I stood and walked to the door. Kara waited there in plain clothes with a warrant folder tucked under her arm for a different errand, which did just fine as theater. Morning, she said for the room when I ushered her in, just checking in on a wellness call. Brittany's color did a panicky choreography. Detective, she said, bright. We were just helping Elaine get her paperwork squared away. I can see that, Kara said mildly, glancing at the generic POA, the bank transfer sheet, the facility form. All three at once. Efficient. I've declined, I said. And that's the end of it, Kara said, not breaking eye contact with Brittany. Right? Of course, Brittany said, every letter gritted. Good, Kara said. She looked at the notary. Sir, you're fine to leave unless they need you for something they both want. Doctor, unless there's a medical emergency, you're not needed. Dr. Sims went very still. Of course. I was only what? Kara asked. Detective voices are like scalpels when they're used right. Only making sure Mrs. Carter had support, she said weakly. She does, Kara said. She has me. Silence recalibrated the room's gravity. Brittany stacked her papers with movements so measured they were a tantrum in slow motion. Daniel swallowed, gave me a last look that tried to find the boy I'd once bandaged, failed, and looked away. They left with their casserole and their blank transfer form and a notary who would probably retire after lunch. Kara stayed, hands in her pockets, shoulders easy. They'll try something else, she said. I know, I said. But we've closed the easy doors and opened the right ones, she said. For us. I exhaled. What next? Lab final on the boutique vial tomorrow, she said. DA Fraud is drafting charges related to the unauthorized access attempts. If the vial matches the bottle, we'll add attempted poisoning. I'll invite them for interviews before we move. Gives them a chance to choose their path. Daniel might try for noble lie, I said. Brittany will perform innocence until it cracks. Kara nodded. Let them. We build with what they give us. After she left, I washed the 2 untouched plates and set them in the rack to dry. The motion calmed me. Ordinary tasks are scaffolding. I wiped the table. I put the stamped assessment back in my leather folder. I put Cassandra's card behind a magnet on the fridge like a family photo. I wrote a short list because lists are how I refuse to drown. Email Leonard. Summary of today. Request that he be present for any future family meetings. Send Kara the ring cam clip of Brittany threatening APS. Call Marjorie. Tell her we got through brunch intact. Put the casserole in the freezer as evidence or petty revenge. Decide later. At dusk, Daniel texted, I'm sorry. I stared at the dots that followed and didn't resolve into more. I typed, I believe you're sorry for this being hard, not for what you did. He didn't write back. I took the chipped flute out one more time, not to enshrine it, but to hold it like an artifact of a vanished version of my life. I slid it back into the safe and closed the door on it and the past. That night, I slept 4 hours straight and woke with the sensation of a vice tightening. Not on me, but on a set of choices that were running out of table. The pinch had done its work. The next beat would be the one where the story pretends I've lost. I could feel it lining itself up. A last push, a show of power, a signature that isn't what they think it is. Made coffee and wrote one last line on my legal pad, a promise to myself as much as a plan. Let them think they've won long enough to show everyone how they tried. Monday started with a text that felt like a hinge. Kara at 7:06 a.m. Lab final on boutique vial matches, aconitine in your bottle. We're drafting charges. I read it twice, then once more aloud, because some words feel sturdier if they bounce off drywall. The second text came at 8:00 on the dot, as if Commerce had set an alarm. Haley from Silver Pines. Just checking, last day to fund the deposit. We can accept a cashier's check at your bank if that's easier. Easiest thing in the world, I said, and my voice was a soft blanket on a coil of wire. Let's meet at the Maple Glen branch at 1. She brightened like an LED. Perfect. I hung up and called Leonard. Final's in, I said. They want a cashier's check at 1. Good, he said. I'll loop in the branch manager and DA Fraud. We'll do this without theatrics. We'll do it with just enough theatrics, I said. They need to think they win before they lose. Spoken like a person who's raised venture money. By 9, the day had arranged itself like a carefully set table. Nora sent over a tiny lapel recorder, legal with my consent in this state, though my house cameras had already been giving us everything we needed. Kara called to confirm timing. A fraud investigator from the DA's office, a woman named Patel with a voice like a scalpel wrapped in velvet, would be present at the branch in plain clothes. The manager, Ms. Ortiz, had agreed to steer us into her office for privacy. Privacy is where scheme and safeguard both like to live. I put on a suit I hadn't needed since the sale, navy with a jacket that made my shoulders look like a decision. I tucked my stamped assessment behind my driver's license. I put the pendant in my pocket and tested it once. Dispatch pinged back with a cheerful test received. I closed my safe and patted it once, the way you pat a dog that knows the trick and is tired of performing it. At 12:47 p.m., I pulled into a parking space facing the bank's glass front. The lot smelled like hot rubber and rain receding. Daniel's SUV slid in 2 spots down. Brittany stepped out first. Cream blouse, gold studs, hair like television. She kissed the air near my cheek. Daniel put his hand on my elbow in a way that would have been sweet 10 years ago and now felt like a rehearsal for control. Haley materialized from somewhere behind the teller line with an admissions folder and the brightness of a brand new bell. Mrs. Carter, so glad we could make this convenient. Convenience is a public good, I said. Let's be quick. Ms. Ortiz appeared, mid-40s, composed, eyes that said she'd seen both bank robbers and newlyweds with joint accounts and preferred neither to cry in her office. Right this way, she said, and ushered us past a row of chairs into a glass box that had a view of the vault door and of the afternoon's patients. We sat. Ortiz angled a small placard toward me. Please have your ID ready. I slid my license over. She copied the numbers with the bored precision of a person who loves a form because forms always end. Haley set her folder on the table like a cake. Brittany slid a printed wire transfer authorization from her leather folio. My bank's logo, a blank amount field, the destination box pre-filled with a routing number I didn't recognize. Daniel placed the decoy power of attorney on top and looked earnest enough to sell a miracle. We'll need a cashier's check for the entrance fee, Haley said, warmth dim to business. $400,000, then we'll be good to go on holding your unit. Of course, I said, and watched Brittany's pupils dilate in a way that had nothing to do with love. Ms. Ortiz looked at me, not at them. Before we start, I'll need to confirm the source account and your instructions. Brittany slid the decoy POA toward her. "We have authority to act on Mrs. Carter's behalf," she said with the skip in her tone she uses when she sees an ending she likes. Ortiz didn't touch it. Power of attorney can authorize an agent to request a cashier's check, but the principal, she inclined her head toward me, has to confirm unless we have other documentation. Also, our legal team reviews specific language before honoring new instruments. "Of course," Daniel said too quickly. "We can have Mom confirm." "She wants this," I smiled at Ortiz. "I'm here. I want this," I said, and then let the sentence sit like a rug over a trapdoor. Ortiz nodded and turned to her keyboard. "From which account will we draw the cashier's check?" Brittany inhaled to say all of them and caught herself. "Her primary checking," she said sweetly. "We don't have the number handy, but we can sign whatever you need." "We'll start with the account ending in 4821, I said, like I was trying to be helpful. It was, of course, the $100 decoy. Ortiz's face didn't move, but her eyes did that tiny kink that says a person is enjoying their work in a quiet way. She typed, clicked, and said, "I see the account. Balance $100. She offered the kind of neutral smile banks use when they've watched marriages end. "What amount did you say?" $400,000, Brittany said, then laughed as if the absurdity of my math mistake would charm the room into forgetting who'd made it. "We'll fund it from her brokerage. We can move funds," Daniel said, sliding the wire form toward me. "Mom, if you sign this, we'll do the rest." He pushed a pen across the table. It bumped my finger. It made a small plastic sound, which I think will be the sound I hear if I ever forget any of today. "All right," I said. I took the pen. For a moment, I saw the room from above. The glass walls. Miss Ortiz, careful. Haley, bright and small. Daniel, hopeful because greed is a hope. Brittany, a blade. And me, a woman in a navy jacket, a pen held between forefinger and thumb. The crisis is always a photograph. I signed. Brittany exhaled. Her shoulders dropped like stage weights. Daniel smiled. Haley did her little hand clap of relief. Ortiz took the paper delicately and slid it into the center of the desk, as if we were all about to witness a minor magic trick. "Wonderful," Brittany said, voice sugared. "And the POA?" She tapped the decoy. "That will let us coordinate the rest with the brokerage." Ortiz looked at me. "Do you want them to handle your transfer details?" "Yes," I said, "within the scope of that document." Ortiz nodded and clicked something. "I'll get the cashier's check prepared," she said, standing. "It will be just a few minutes." She stepped out. The door whispered shut. For a heartbeat, the mood in the little glass box popped like champagne. Brittany reached for my hand as if to fold gratitude around it. I moved my fingers to the far side of my knee. Daniel leaned back as if in a chair finally built for him. "See?" he said softly. "Easy." "Easy," I echoed, and watched the word move through him like hot liquor. Across the lobby, Miss Ortiz turned left instead of right. She disappeared behind a frosted door. In my pocket, my phone buzzed once. "Kara, we're here. DA fraud with me. Ortiz is looping us in back." Haley was mid-sentence about move-in coordinators when the office door opened again. "Ms. Ortiz returned with a white envelope and another woman with a lanyard. Patel. Unassuming, tired eyes, blouse in a color that looked like trust. And Kara. Civilian clothes, badge nowhere visible, just a noticeable gravity she never takes off. "Apologies for the delay," Ortiz said. "Before we release any instrument this size, our fraud unit reviews the underlying authority." She looked at the decoy document as if it were a museum piece. "This power of attorney is limited to an account ending in 4821 and expires in 90 days. Granting no authority over brokerage or other assets. We will honor it exactly as written." Silence in which Brittany's face became an equation that refused to solve. Ortiz held up the envelope and tapped it once. "Here's your cashier's check from account 4821. She slid it across the desk to me. It was for $100. The check looked small and honorable. "Is this a joke?" Brittany asked, the sweetness flushed from her voice. "It's a cashier's check," Ortiz said. "Drawn against the account the instrument authorizes." "You can take the rest from her primary," Brittany said. She signed the wire. Patel's voice came in, soft. "She signed a wire form with no source account indicated and no amount written in by her hand," she said. "Any attempt to use it to move funds from a restricted or unrelated account would constitute an unauthorized transfer. Your login attempts over the weekend from your boutique iPad and your phone to an account not in your name resulted in internal flags. We have those logs." Brittany laughed, a high, wild sound. "We were trying to help her." Kara took a small step forward. The room's air changed temperature. "You ordered aconite," she said, conversational as if identifying a perfume. "You mixed it into champagne at Elaine's home. We have the lab results on the bottle from her kitchen. We collected a matching vial at your boutique this morning. We have search terms from your devices. We have bank attempts on an account you photographed from her desk and another you accessed trying to reset passwords for a custodian portal that doesn't exist. And we have the phrase, 'use the chipped one' in a sworn statement from your mother." Brittany went still in the way prey does before it bolts. "You can't prove intent," she said, but it sounded exhausted at the edges, like a defense that had burned too hot and gone cold. "We like to let people prove their own intent," Patel said gently. "For instance, by walking into a bank with a limited power of attorney and trying to use it to move funds it doesn't touch." Daniel flinched. "I didn't," he began, but the sentence fell apart, shy of a verb brave enough to help it stand. Kara's eyes moved to him, and for a moment I saw the mother in her, the cop who'd raised 100 boys in interview rooms by telling them the one true thing they were too tired not to say. "Daniel," she said, "would you like to come down to the station and talk? I'd prefer not to do this here." He swallowed. For the first time, he looked at me, and what crossed his face wasn't pleading. It was apology interrupted by recognition of the door we were each choosing. "I'll come," he said softly. Brittany snapped toward him, eyes bright with something feral. "Don't you dare!" Kara's tone didn't change as she said, "Brittany Carter, you are under arrest for attempted murder, attempted grand larceny, identity theft, and unlawful access to a financial account." She turned her gently, the way you turn a child to face a teacher, and read the Miranda as if it were a liturgy she respected. Ortiz's door stayed open. Bank sound, printers, soft cash drawers, a teller laughing at something small, went on as if this were just another errand, which I suppose it was. Brittany tried for my eyes as Kara cuffed her. "You did this," she hissed. "I did a lot of things," I said. "You put poison in my house." For the first time since the party, I saw her as a daughter, which is to say, as a person who had once wanted something simple enough to be clean. The feeling passed, but it made a small unhoused ache anyway. Kara glanced at Ortiz, who nodded toward a side door. "We have a discreet exit," Ortiz said. "Less spectacle." "Thank you," Kara said. "Elaine, Ms. Patel will take your statement formally later. For now, go home with your attorney. Lock your door. We'll bring Daniel in voluntarily. May I?" I lifted the $100 cashier's check. "By all means," Ortiz said. "It's yours." Haley, forgotten until now, had grown pale in a deep and honorable way. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Silver Pines, we didn't mean to. We thought we were helping." "You were a script," I said. "Everybody's a script some days. Go back to work." She nodded, small and stunned, and disappeared like a person who has just learned the cost of convenience. Leonard appeared at my shoulder, sudden as a stored umbrella. I don't know when he'd arrived. Probably the moment Ortiz texted from the back. "Let's go," he murmured, before the adrenaline realizes it hasn't been paid. We walked out through a side corridor that smelled like toner and old carpet. The day had gone hotter while we were inside. In the parking lot, light bounced off windshields like accusations. I sat in the passenger seat of Leonard's car and put my hands flat on my thighs to keep them from telling on me. He drove without speaking until we cleared the light at Maple and 3rd. "Are you all right?" he asked finally. "I signed a thing to make other things true," I said. "So yes." He nodded. "That's most of law." At my house, the front garden looked exactly the same, which felt offensive. I went inside and stood in the kitchen and listened to the new locks feel like company. I set the cashier's check on the counter and stared at it. The amount looked like a joke and a witness both. Nora called. "Saw a squad car at the bank on the traffic cam feed I watch when I'm bored. Is our show over?" "For today," I said. "Brittany's in cuffs. Daniel's walking in with Kara. The bank held its line." "Good," she said, and there was real relief in it, not the kind people perform for you. "I'll keep watching the financials. Finnerty's man pinged Daniel at noon. He's going to get louder." "Let him," I said. "Volume is in control." After we hung up, I made tea because the kettle knows how to be helpful. I poured it into a cup I'd bought in a museum gift shop and watched the steam be a kind of sermon. The house exhaled slowly like a dog realizing no one's going to make it go outside in the rain. At 3:40 p.m., Kara called. "He's here," she said. "He asked for a lawyer. I told him to text one. If he wants yours, I said he could do worse." "Let him find his own," I said. "It's past time he stopped using mine." There was a pause, soft. "Elaine," she said, voice not cop for the first time. "I've read a lot of statements. Yours this morning. The line about not letting them make you smaller." She cleared it away with a professional cough. "Anyway, we'll keep you posted on charging." "Thank you," I said, and meant it the way you mean water. I hung up and went to the garage. I opened the freezer and touched the zipper bag containing the bottle with my knuckles, a tiny ritual of respect. Evidence is a strange altar. You leave offerings at it. Patience, dignity, the willingness to be boring so the truth can be loud. When I came back into the kitchen, the light had shifted from white to honey. The afternoon was telling the day it had done its best. I took a pen from the drawer and wrote on my legal pad. I signed the thing. They believed it. Bank refused the rest. Arrest made. Daniel walked in. I am still the size I was this morning. I taped the $100 cashier's check to the top of the page. It looked ridiculous. It looked perfect. At 7, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number that turned out to be Haley again. "I hope you still consider Silver Pines when you're ready. We have a wait list, but..." I turned the phone face down. Later, maybe I'd call and suggest she add a module to her admissions training titled, "How Not to Be a Tool in Other People's Theater." The doorbell rang once, gently. My neighbor, Mary, holding a foil-wrapped loaf. Word travels without phones in suburbs like ours. "Heard there were police at the bank," she said, because kindness in New Jersey wears directness like a favorite sweater. "This is banana bread, no nuts." "I like you," I said, unexpectedly near tears. "I like you too," she said simply, and left me the loaf like a permission slip for ordinary life. I cut a slice, buttered it, and took one bite. It tasted like a house with the lights on. I wrapped the rest and put it on the counter next to the cashier's check and laughed. Finally, a small private laugh that felt like air finding a new room. Night came early, as it does when a day takes more muscle than you'd budgeted. I checked the doors. I checked the cameras. I put the pendant on the nightstand where it blinked like a cricket in a good story. Before I turned off the light, I opened the safe and took out the chipped flute. Only for a second. I didn't need to hold it. I just needed to look at it and think, the crisis looks like capitulation from the outside. From the inside, it feels like choosing the place where the door will swing shut on someone else's hand. Tomorrow would be interviews and charging memos and calls I didn't want to have with people I used to love. But tonight, the house felt aligned. I lay down and slept like a woman who had given away $100 to prove which 400,000 would stay, and who had finally heard handcuffs speak the part of justice that belonged to her. Tuesday morning felt like a room after applause, air still humming, nothing moving. Brittany made bail before lunch. Nora texted me the docket like a storm forecast. Release with conditions, no contact with victim, surrender passport. By 2, Brittany had violated one condition and bent another. She called from a blocked number and left a message pitched to sound like an apology if you didn't understand the shape of words. Elaine, she said, syrup poured over gravel. I'm sorry for misunderstandings. We're all upset. Let us bring dinner tonight. We can talk like family. I forwarded the voicemail to Kara. A minute later, bail violation documented. Do not engage. Patrol will sweep by hourly. That should have steadied me. It did and it didn't. In the quiet, the house felt like an ally who didn't know how to talk. At 3, my doorbell rang once. Politely, I checked the camera. Marjorie stood there, hair brushed, lipstick a shade braver than yesterday, a tote bag on her shoulder. I'm sprung, she said when I opened the door. The doctor said I shouldn't be alone until we rule out triggers. Turns out the trigger was poison, so I thought I'd sit with you and we could rule out everything else. Come in, I said, and meant it in the broader sense. We drank tea we opened ourselves and watched a show neither of us cared about, like 2 women cosplaying ordinary. She asked if I had more hydrangeas. I told her the ones she'd brought were still blue as promises. We were being brave on purpose. At 5, Daniel texted, "Can I stop by? Alone, please." I showed Marjorie. She pursed her mouth. Let him, she said, surprising me. He'll either confess or he'll rehearse. Either way, you'll learn something. He arrived 20 minutes later with a face like a hallway of closed doors. In my kitchen, he didn't reach for me, and I didn't offer him anything to hold. Brittany's out, he said, unnecessary sentence. I know, I said. He looked past me and saw Marjorie in the family room. His body did a little involuntary lurch as if his muscles remembered good manners before his mind did. Mrs. Hale? He said stiffly. Daniel, she said, the name an assessment and a mercy both. He rubbed the back of his neck. I came to say... He trailed off. The next thing out of his mouth was honest, which surprised us both. I came to say, I don't know how to land this without breaking us. You broke it, I said, not cruel, just accurate. He flinched, as if getting the right answer on a test and finding it hurt anyway. There's a man, he said. Finnerty. He's not patient. I'm familiar, I said. We're on each other's to-do lists. Daniel's mouth twisted. He wants his money in 2 weeks. He doesn't sue. He shows up. You brought him into my life, I said softly, not the other way around. He pressed his palms flat on the counter and leaned, breathing like he'd just run somewhere and found the door locked. I was going to ask you to sign a line of credit, he said, voice flat with shame. I'm not going to now. I came to say that, to say I'm not going to. Thank you, I said, because that was both nothing and something. He nodded once, quick, and left before Marjorie could stand up and hug him or slap him. I'm not sure which would have come first. Dusk slid down the street early like a person with a bad feeling. I walked Marjorie to the guest room and set a glass of water on the nightstand. Lock this door, I said. Text me if a chipmunk sneezes. And you? She asked. I'll be what I am, I said, prepared. At 9, the house cameras picked up movement at the sidewalk. 2 silhouettes, not Daniel's height. Both with that casual purpose men wear when they think their job is a kind of weather you have to accept. They didn't come to the door. They walked past, turned around at the corner, and walked past again. My phone chimed. Carrie. Unit did a drive-by. 2 unknown males parked at the end of block earlier. Plates run. Rental. Call if they come up the drive. I set the pendant next to my mug like a second handle. At 10:17 p.m., the back camera caught a slice of light where no light should be. The alley gate. A shadow moved there, then another. The doorbell didn't ring. That was the point. I texted Kara, activity at back gate, and stood, not slow, not fast. I wanted to be standing when it started. In the guest room, a floorboard creaked. Marjorie, awake and listening with the seriousness of the recently saved. There came a knock, not at the front, at the side door that opens from the mudroom, the one my family uses because it feels like belonging. "Elaine!" A woman's voice. "Dr. Sims." "It's me." "There's been a report to APS about confusion. We need to do a quick screen just to keep you safe." They always say safe like a sweetheart word. "I have an assessment," I called, loud enough for the camera mic. "Stamped." "Those can be faked," she said. "This will take 5 minutes." "Bring a warrant," I said, and pressed the pendant. Dispatch chirped in my ear like a friendly ghost. City PD on the way. Something bumped the gate. A male voice I didn't know. "Lady, open up or we're calling for a wellness hold." Marjorie texted from the guest room. "I'm calling Cassandra, APS." I sent back a thumbs up. Volume isn't control. Dr. Sims's voice lost some sugar. "Your son asked us to check on you." The not quite lie was the point. I could hear the stitch where it came apart. "I'm not opening the door," I said, and steadied my breath so the microphone would hear the steadiness. Metal on metal at the gate. One of the men laughed softly. In my head, the house drew a map, points of entry, lines of sight, cameras blinking like tired eyes deciding where to look next. The side door's handle twitched. "We can always call the police," the man said. "Make them open it." "Please do," I said, and the siren answered for me from 2 blocks away, then 1, then very close. The porch light flared white as the cruiser's spots hit the siding. A bark of authority. "Police!" And shoes on gravel. 2 uniforms rounded the corner with speed that meant their footings knew this yard. Behind them, Kara, hair pulled back, jacket thrown on over a t-shirt that said she hadn't planned to be here and was always planning to be here. The men at the gate froze. One held his hands up like the gesture might work if he performed it early enough. The other let his go half up, like surrender, but not really. "Evening," Kara said mildly, which in her mouth sounded like a warning. "What's the errand?" "Welfare check," the taller man said, professional liar tone. "Ordered by who?" she asked. "Doctor here," he said, jerking his chin toward Sims. "Family's concerned." "Family can be arrested," Kara said, and that was new. The men went stiller. "Dr. Sims, you're on release pending investigation for your role Friday." Her eyes flicked to the uniform to her right. "Officer, if she's within the curtilage without consent, that's trespass." Sims did a little shuffle backward that would have been funny in daylight. I was called by the facility. She forced brightness into the shape of the lie. "Silver Pines." "Facilities don't issue warrants," Kara said. "Step off the property." The taller man tried one last thing. "We can do this the nice way," he said. "We are," Kara said, and it was honestly true. "Turn around, hands behind your back." She said it like a bedtime story. He hesitated half a beat too long. The uniform had his wrists before his brain finished the sentence. The shorter man complied quickly, which is a kind of wisdom. Dr. Sims clutched her tote like a shield. "Names," Kara said, and the men gave them. One was exactly the name I expected, not Finnerty. Finnerty never shows, but a co-worker of Finnerty's weather. Attempted unlawful entry, the uniform listed. Trespass, possible witness intimidation. "And violation of bail conditions in your case, doctor," Kara added without raising her voice. "You're done here. Walk." She looked at the camera above the door and then straight at me through the lens. "You okay?" "Yes." I said out loud to an empty mudroom, then texted, "Fine. Marjorie's here. APS on their way too." Cassandra called as the cruisers rolled. "I heard the scanner," she said. "I'm 5 out. Do you want me?" "Yes," I said. "Bring a pen with a good click." 5 minutes later, my kitchen held an odd congregation. Me, hair pulled back with a rubber band I found on a doorknob. Marjorie, robe-tied like she was cinching a sail. Cassandra from APS with a tote and a calm that could anchor a room. And Kara, writing a quick synopsis in a notebook with clean, quiet lines. My cameras caught all of it. Good. Let the house be a witness that doesn't argue. "Here's where we are," Kara said. "Brittany violated bail. Dr. Sims will likely get hers revoked as well. The 2 men will be booked. They'll lean, 'We were hired for transport.' We'll see who they name. I'm betting it rhymes with sinner tie." Marjorie made a small sound that might have been a laugh if it had permission. Cassandra patted her hand. "I can file a protective notation," Cassandra said. "Any future reports concerning your confusion route through me first. I'll add that an ex parte guardianship petition, if attempted, should be flagged to the judge who saw today's arrest affidavit. Paper has memory when you write on the right kind." "Thank you," I said. "Write on everything." Kara tapped her pen. "There's one more thing," she said. "Daniel's voluntary got weird. He started noble lying and then stopped. He asked for 5 minutes off record, not allowed. I told him to put it on paper. He wrote a statement." She looked at me carefully. "He names Brittany as the actor. He names himself as witness and as someone who said things on a call he now knows were the wrong kind. He names Finnerty's man as the person who suggested transport tonight." "Did he sign it?" I asked. She nodded, with the line, "I never wanted my mother dead." I stood there and let the sentence stand next to me like a person. I didn't invite it to sit. "DA can charge conspiracy if they want," Kara continued, "businesslike to give me something besides feeling to drive. Or they can take cooperation and build. That's their chessboard. My job is your house and your body." "And my name," I said. "And your name," she agreed. They left close to midnight. I walked Marjorie to her room again and waited for the click of the lock. Back in the kitchen, the pendant blinked calmly on the table. Brave little cricket. The list I hadn't written tonight existed anyway. Sims violated release, arrested. 2 men in custody. Finnerty's, weather named, Daniel wrote. I did not open the door. Sleep came in sections, like reading chapters out of order and trusting the spine would hold. In one of the breaks, I pictured the chipped flute and didn't reach for it. The ritual need had gone slack. Good. Wednesday was paperwork and phone calls, the ugly grout of justice. Kara sent a text mid-afternoon. DA filing formal charges. Attempted murder, conspiracy, TBD, attempted larceny, ID theft, unlawful access, witness tampering, bail revocation for Sims. She added, almost as an afterthought, "Finnerty got the message. His guy is talking." At 4, Leonard called. "Preliminary hearing for Brittany set Friday. They'll posture. We'll show up dignified with facts." "Will I have to see her?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "You don't have to speak." "I might," I said, surprising us both. Friday arrived with the idiot brightness of a fall morning trying to be charming. The courthouse hallway smelled like pine cleaner and wet umbrellas. Leonard walked beside me in a suit that had seen better judges. Nora texted from the back, "I'm in the gallery. If you faint, I'll film you tastefully." Brittany sat at the defense table in a blouse designed to convince people she made pies. Her lawyer wore a tie loud enough to draw fire. Daniel sat 2 rows back, alone, hands knotted so tight his knuckles were their own country. Kara stood with DA Fraud, a woman with Patel's velvet scalpel voice whose name I now learned was Annika. and a stack of tidy exhibits, lab results, photos, device logs, bank alerts, Marjorie's vial photo, the pastry box screenshot, the boutique search warrant returns, last night's arrest report. The judge was the same one Kara had hoped for. Cassandra's notation had done its work. He wore his disapproval like a collar. The defense went first, as if leaping might create ground. Misunderstandings, some family, elder anxiety, exaggerations. Homeopathic tincture. He said monkshood like it was a band. Annika stood without flourish. "The state is not guessing," she said. "The state is reading." From the defendant's searches, from her purchases, from the chemistry in a bottle she poured and a vial she kept, from bank logs she tripped, from a camera that recorded her attempting to violate a victim's boundaries while on bail, from a doctor, now also charged, who arrived late at night to reinvent evaluation, and from a mother whose phrase, "the chipped one is corroborated by every other piece of evidence." Then she called Marjorie. Marjorie walked like a person in pain who refuses to hold the place that hurts. On the stand, under oath, she said, "Clear as water." He said, "Use the chipped one." She held up her phone, the vial photo, and the courtroom did the small intake of breath rooms do when an object points at a person's soul. Annika called Kara. Kara's testimony was bare and clean. She described the bottle, the lab, the bank, the boutique search. She did not say more than she had to. The judge liked her for it and tried not to show it. Then the judge asked, "Ms. Carter, would you like to speak?" And the entire courtroom turned its head like birds on a wire. Leonard looked at me. I said, "Yes." I stood, hands by my side. I didn't look at Brittany. I looked at the judge, because he was the person whose job was to name what had happened. "I'm 70, I said. "I sold a company I built. I can bake a cake and read a term sheet. I keep a chipped champagne flute to remind me not to hand my flaws to a guest. A week ago, my daughter-in-law put poison in my house. My son watched her aim it. I am not confused. I am not confused about whether she meant me harm or about whether there is a difference between care and control. I am not confused about my name." I paused, not for effect, but to feel my own body as a place where words were allowed to live. "The police did their job," I said. "The DA did theirs. I did mine. I stayed alive and I refused to be smaller so someone else could be bigger. Today, I'm asking you to keep the size of me safe while the law finishes its work." There was no sound in the room except an old woman's throat a few rows back clearing itself like a benediction. The judge didn't smile. Judges don't. He did nod, the smallest honest thing any of us had earned. He denied any motion that resembled freedom. He remanded Brittany into custody. He set a protective order with teeth. He admonished Dr. Sims by name, though she wasn't on the docket. Word travels sideways in courthouses like this. He looked at Daniel when he said, "Family is not a defense against law." And Daniel flinched because flinching was the only thing left his body knew how to do. We stepped into the hallway and the buzz of the building's lungs. Nora squeezed my shoulder and said, "You didn't faint. Tasteful filming unnecessary." Leonard squeezed my elbow. Kara said, "That'll read," which I think is cop for "you did right." When I got home, the garden was still the garden, and the house was still the house, and the kettle still boiled when I asked it to. I pulled a fresh page on my legal pad and wrote the last plan this part of the story needed. Cancel Silver Pine's hold, send Haley a note with one sentence. I prefer my own house. Send Cassandra a thank you and a gift card not so large it's weird. Handwrite the note. Ask Leonard to begin the quiet work. Restraining orders finalized. Trust paperwork filed with the same dignity as before. Call a locksmith for Marjorie. Buy her a new alarm with a green light. I took the $100 cashier's check off the page where I'd taped it and slid it into a drawer with the pastry box tissue and other relics of theater. Then I poured a glass. From a bottle I opened myself and walked out onto the back deck. The night smelled like wet wood and a calendar about to turn. Somewhere in town, a siren went past and didn't stop here. Somewhere a child asked for water and got it. I said out loud, because some things need air to grow, they thought I would sign away being me. Then I raised the glass to the quiet and added, I didn't. The trap had snapped. Not with a bang. With paperwork and recordings, and a woman who refused to open the wrong door even when voices she used to love stood on the other side of it and called her by her name. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.